Hi, my name's Diana. I decided to do my project on cognitive load and galvanic skin response, or GSR. I just kind of wanted to look at these two things and see how they're related. So, just a little bit of background. Um, so, cognitive load is the amount of cognitive resources that your brain is using during a task. I kind of like to think of it as like your brain power, like how much power your brain is exerting while you're processing or performing a task. Another way to think of cognitive load is to think of it as working memory. Um, your working memory is the information your brain is currently working with or processing. So, cognitive load um, essentially could be measured by working memory or vice versa. Um, so, to actually measure cognitive load, I chose to go with a physiological measure of the galvanic skin response, or GSR, to measure the sweat gland activity of individuals. I was interested to see what physiological responses would occur as a result of cognitive load. So, further background. A couple studies examined GSR and cognitive load. One study found that GSR is a good sensitive measure for both cognitive load and stress. I think cognitive load and stress go hand in hand because I know when I'm having to do a lot of thinking or like trying to do like organic chemistry, your cognitive load is very high and your stress level is also very high. So as you can see, the figure on the right shows cognitive load tasks against GSR with both stress and no stress conditions. And you can see that the stressful condition is much higher in terms of GSR compared to the no stress condition. So I just thought that was kind of interesting to look at stress because I think, again, stress and cognitive load may go hand in hand. GSR is also a good physiological indicator of an individual's emotional state as well as their cognitive load. GSR just overall is a good measure of human arousal, and you can tell a lot about, their emotions, stress level, things like that just by measuring GSR. And one other study found that GSR increases as cognitive load increases. So I'm hoping to replicate that here with my study. Additionally, there was a significant difference found between reading and math tasks, which are reflective of different cognitive load levels, and that is also what I implemented here in my study. So, after looking into the background of GSR and cognitive load, I decided I wanted to replicate a similar study. So, the aim of my study was to determine how GSR changes with respect to an individual's cognitive load. So, my main research question was to examine how different cognitive load levels impact GSR. And I hypothesized based off of what I had read in those articles that increased cognitive load tasks would also lead to an increased galvanic skin response. So, methods for this study. GSR data was collected using the BioPack machine and laptop computer. EDA leads were used, and they were attached to the middle and index finger of the participant's non-dominant hand. There were two experimental conditions, low and high cognitive load, or repeating words back to the experimenter, and mental math problems. Those were both the low cognitive load and the high cognitive load conditions. So the first condition administered to the participants was the low cognitive load condition, and that is where the experimenter would read 3 words to the participant, and the participant would repeat these back. So something similar to what's shown in the blue box, the experimenter would just say train, lion, rainbow, and the participant would just repeat those words back to the experimenter. The second condition was the high cognitive load condition with the mental math problems. So the experimenter would present a math problem similar to the one shown down in the orange box, and the participant would, look at the math problem, compute it in their head. They weren't allowed to write anything down. It was all mental math, and then they would say the answer aloud to the experimenter. Each condition had 10 trials per participant. GSR was measured during each trial while they were performing the tasks given for each condition. So like the F1 and F9 keys to mark the GSR events were marked while the participants were either reading the words or trying to compute the answer to the math problem. So after all 10 trials for each condition were performed, averages were computed for each participant, and then an overall average was computed by condition. So we had an average for the low cognitive load and the high cognitive load as well. After the means were computed, a statistical t-test using both of the means was analyzed to determine if the difference was significant. And just one t-test was ran between these two condition levels, the low cognitive and the high cognitive load. So here are the results. Again, only one t-test was performed to compare the means. The t-test yielded a significant result with a p-value of 0.003, so less than 0.05, indicating it is significant. You can tell by the bar graph that there is a large difference in GSR for each cognitive load condition. And then you can also see in the table below, you can see the means have a pretty big difference in their GSR. And also the standard deviation is pretty different. The high cognitive load had a lot more variability compared to the low cognitive load condition. So the significant difference in GSR between low and high cognitive load conditions suggests that GSR will increase in response to increasing cognitive load. My results support my initial hypothesis, as the increased cognitive load also produced a significantly increased GSR. This shows how a stronger physiological response can occur with increased cognition, and further suggests that cognitive load isn't only isolated to the brain, but can also have a physiological impact on the body. I just thought this was really interesting to see how, when you're thinking harder or using more brain power, your body reflects that, and your body almost knows that by, producing this higher GSR. Your body is just responsive to what's going on with the brain. So some limitations to this study include the limited number of condition types. Ideally, multiple cognitive loads would be compared. So like a low, a medium, a high. I unfortunately only had 2 cognitive loads in this study, and then also baseline GSR to be able to compare all the GSR levels across, like no cognitive load, and then compared to low, medium, and high. Additionally, the number and demographic of participants limits this study, and that it cannot be applied to the general population because our demographic was so narrow and the participant number was low. So, our demographic was all college students around the same age, and I don't know that these results would necessarily be universal by age, but I guess that's something to look into. Lastly, the materials used for data collection are provided by the university where many students use them. I'm very grateful for CSU for providing these materials, but because of their constant use, they may not always be completely accurate in their data collection and picking up of that electrodermal activity. So future directions for this study. I would like to examine GSR with both cognitive load and stress and see how all 3 of them may be related. I think it would be interesting to see if high cognitive load mimics the same GSR response as high stress situations. Another direction to take this study would be to look at GSR across all standard school subjects, so math, science, reading, English. Just look at students performing each of those subjects and comparing GSR during each subject. I think that would be really interesting to see essentially which subjects require the higher cognitive load or then elicit a stronger physiological response. I would also be interested to see how heart rate and cognitive load are related, as I've already shown that a physiological response can be elicited due to increased cognitive load. I think it would be interesting to look at another physiological aspect in regards to cognitive load. So, that's all I have. Thanks to everyone that listened to this. I hope you all have a great break. And these are my references. I hope everyone has a great break. Thanks for listening and good luck with finals.